Well, we're pushing midnight here in a day that was in the mid-90s. Did a lot of housework. So I hope I can get through this podcast okay without too many stumbles, but forgive me for the ones there are. I'm reading quotes from The Anti-Mary Exposed, Rescuing the Culture from Toxic Femininity by Carrie Gress. It's sold on Amazon. I'm reading it from Kindle. It's for $10. That means that I have to use the page locations. I like just turning physical pages, but I guess this will work. So, first of all is location number 244. Whatever page that would be in the hardcover, I don't know. It doesn't tell me. So, onward, reading my favorite passages. I think I have 8 of them. The Anti-Marian Appearance. If there is indeed an anti-Marian spirit, what might it look like? Well, a woman, in its grasp, would not value children. She would be bawdy, vulgar, and angry. She would rage against the idea of anything resembling humble obedience or self-sacrifice for others. She would be petulant, shallow, catty, and overly sensuous. She would also be self-absorbed, manipulative, gossipy, anxious, and self-servingly ambitious. In short, she would be everything that Mary is not. She would bristle especially at the idea of being a virgin or a mother. Women have always desired equality and respect, but our current culture isn't seeking it through the grace of Mary. Rather, the culture seeks this equality and respect through the vices of Machiavelli. Rage, intimidation, tantrums, bullying, raw emotion, in the absence of logic. It is this aggressive impulse, this toxic femininity, that finds pride in calling oneself nasty, feels empowered by dressing as a vagina, belittles men, and sees the tragically ironic need to drop civility so that civility can somehow return again. The devil knows that all these marks of the anti-Mary, rage, indignation, vulgarity, and pride, short-circuit a woman's greatest gifts: wisdom, prudence, patience, unflappable peace, intuition, her ability to weave together the fabric of society, and her capacity for a deep and fulfilling relationship with God. Indeed, the father of lies promises power, fame, fortune, and sterile, fleeting pleasures. A striking clue that all these things we witness in abundance today are at odds with God's plan for women is that, for all the so-called progress women have made, there is precious little evidence that any of it has actually made women happier. Divorce rates are still staggering, with 70% initiated by women. Suicide rates are soaring. Drug and alcohol abuse is unprecedented. STDs, particularly among women, are at epidemic levels, and depression and anxiety are everywhere. Women are not getting happier, just more medicated. Another clue that all these claims to simple undifferentiated inequality or equality are fictitious arises in times of crisis. In disasters such as hurricanes or mass shootings, it is predominantly men who man the boats to rescue those in need or offer their bodies to protect women from the spray of bullets. In dire situations, for all the talk of equality, the heroic nature of men cannot be suppressed. Women certainly can be and often are, but their true heroism is usually expressed in ways more in keeping with their nature, in imitating Mary rather than men. On to location 566. The woman of folly inflicts gross spiritual and physical damage. Her toxicity spreads like a cancer on a soul and society. She is manipulative, deceitful, deceptive, seductive, and narcissistic. She quietly destroys others with a smile on her face and nary a prick to her conscience. She teaches others to do the same, enthralling and entrapping them with her beauty, her aloof sophistication, and her faux kindness. Sirens, gorgons, harpies, Scylla, Medusa, Echidna, Astarte, Lamia, and Isis are among the scores of women of folly that come down to us through mythology and literature. Two others in particular serve as the most prominent women of folly archetypes, two whose vices seem to be making further inroads today, and who serve as broader categories for us to put the rest into and show us all the ways women can go wrong: Jezebel and Lilith. On to marker 753. By the way, I know this is inflammatory for many. Toxic femininity. But why should it be if you understand that there are women who are evil? Is that a surprise? Is it a surprise that there are men who are evil? So there is a kind of masculinity that is toxic, a distorted masculinity, antichrist-like, or in this case, a kind of femininity that is toxic, anti-Mary-like. Okay, women's liberation, the Bolsheviks believed, was completely tied to the success of communism. Russian revolutionary Inessa Armand emphasized this point in one pithy quote: "If women's liberation is unthinkable without communism, then communism is unthinkable without women's liberation." It was imperative that the idea of motherhood was divorced from the reality of being a woman. The official party position was stated by Alexandra Kollontai, the head of the Soviet Women's Department, who said, "The shackles of the family, of the housework, of prostitution still weigh heavily on the working woman. Working women and peasant women can only rid themselves of this situation and achieve equality in life itself, and not just in law, if they put all their energies into making Russia a truly communist society." The Bolsheviks severed the tie between motherhood and womanhood. These same ideas would be echoed by the women's liberation movement in the West several decades later. The Soviets worked quickly to legalize abortion, to make women equal to men, and then they put the woman to work. As author Paul Kengor wrote, "You weren't free to own a farm or a factory or a business or a bank account or go to church or print your own newspaper, but if you wanted a divorce or abortion, the sky was the limit in Bolshevik Russia." With abortion free and legal, it spread like wildfire among the population. In 1934, abortions outweighed live births by 3-1. Only later, when the Soviets eventually realized their self-created birth dearth was leading to massive demographic problems, much like China's today, did policy changes come about that incentivized having children. The Soviets, not content with their own borders, sought to take over neighboring countries. Though mostly thwarted before the Second World War, they were victorious in taking over numerous satellite countries and their spoils from the war, including Poland, Ukraine, Bulgaria, Latvia, Georgia, Romania, Hungary, East Germany, and Czechoslovakia. Behind this new Iron Curtain, these once vibrant countries were stuffed into the gray, ill-fitting militant uniform required by the Soviets. Faith was clandestine. Friends turned on each other in an instant, and everyone, friend, foe, or family, was a comrade. The Russian Revolution unleashed the idea that human nature is infinitely malleable and can be rearranged into perfect equality. People who lived under the Soviet shadow paid a horrendous price, since nature, and all that is natural, manifests a great deal of inequality. Lenin et al. Had to tear it all down. The natural and the supernatural orders were the real obstacles that had to be destroyed. It is almost impossible to describe the widespread devastation these errors brought to people of Russia and beyond. The scars are still readily apparent amid the people, the land, and the faith. Vicki Thorne, founder of Project Rachel, reports that one woman admitted having 80 abortions. Thorne, having never heard of such a high number, first had to consult a doctor to verify that such a number was even physically possible. Yes, the doctor said, and not uncommon as one might think. On to 873. There's so much to comment on here, but the book speaks well for itself. I'll just go on letting it do that. Despite our contemporary reading of human nature, there is simply no way for a woman to take herself out of motherhood. Everything she is or does is, in essence, somehow related to her embrace or rejection of it. Women are made for motherhood, so our stewardship of life and the quality of our character can be judged on how we engage in it. This is the way human nature is hardwired, and everything in our bodies speaks to this truth. In our hips, in our wombs, in our arms that are bent at the elbow instead of straight like men's, to better cradle a child, in our breasts, which offer nourishment, and so on. We can reject this reality. We can wish it weren't so, but we cannot escape it. Even that woman who undergoes surgery to transition into a male, at her core, is still a woman made for mothering. 100 years from now, her bones will tell the real story, and there will be no sign left that she was a he, because her hips and arms are still those of a woman, and her proportions will still be female. Try as we might to change her sex, or unsex her, as Lady Macbeth dared request, we cannot truly succeed. The natural order simply cannot be changed, no matter how sad or angry the fact makes some. On to location 1242. So I don't know in a hardback what page number that actually would be. During a small meeting with 100 female student activists, professors, and students, someone asked what the future of abortion promotion is. The honored guest, Frances Kissling, responded, "Now that there are ultrasounds, everyone knows it is a baby. We need another strategy." No one in the audience seemed to bat an eye at the notion feminists had to figure out another way to justify killing children. Margaret also experienced professors like Elizabeth Schussler, Ferenza, and Mark Jordan, who advocate the selling for the public on extreme ideas with the hope that it normalizes the less extreme, such as gay marriage and pederasty. They believe that truth is a spectrum, and their goal is to pull people closer to their cause by pushing the boundaries beyond it. So why do women fall into the trap of following this line of thinking? Partially because women have been hardwired to consider what other women think and how they act, and then to mimic it. It is part of our set of survival skills. More significantly, the matriarchy acts as a kind of gatekeeper, preventing different voices from being heard in the public square. And finally, because it is so ubiquitous, most women assume that this is right route to happiness. Surely all these experts must be right about relationships, culture, human sexuality, and careers. But never addressed is the disconnect between what the matriarchy presents and what actually brings happiness. We don't hear about the broken women after an abortion, the career woman who wishes she had more children or any children at all, the extensive physical damage caused by the pill, or the children devastated by divorce. And yet, this is the wreckage left behind by the culture the matriarchy has produced. On the other side of the coin, we also don't hear about peaceful and joyful religious sisters who have given their lives for Christ, or very content mothers of big families who wouldn't trade their jobs for the world. Nevertheless, because of its sense of sisterhood and commitment to girl power, feminism is the badge carried by nearly every modern-day woman who considers herself liberated, self-determining, and independent. Feminism has effectively made itself fashionable and painted its enemies as awkward, tired, and out-of-touch zombies like Stepford wives, so much so that few American women today can articulate any sort of alternative to the trendy positions repeated in political slogans on The View or in Cosmo. Women have been duped into thinking that this is the only way that modern women can think. On to 1302. This is a quote. But the paradox is that the feminist woman, being a fragment of political imagination, is considered by feminists to be a proper woman, a woman in the strict sense, the truest woman. Just for the communist and Marxist proletariat was the truest representative of the working class. By the same token, a real woman living in a real society, like a real worker living in a real society, is politically not to be trusted because she deviates too much from the political model. In fact, a non-feminist woman is not a woman at all, just as a non-communist worker is not really a proletarian. The non-woman, therefore, must be denied a voice so that she cannot do damage to the ideological bulwark holding up the effort. And on to 2190. One of the things I didn't realize, however, was that my quest to understand Our Lady started even before I was married with children. It came to my attention that most of the things promoted by women in our culture, being outspoken, assertive, independent, and ambitious, weren't producing the kind of happiness I expected. I started paying attention to music, poetry, and movies anywhere I could find evidence of what made for truly timeless and great women, not just those propped up by our culture. And what did I find? Remarkable and beautiful portrayals of women using interior capacities I had never thought of before. Kindness, compassion, listening, anticipating the needs of others, sincerity, and goodness. Getting married and having children only made me go deeper to find and live these newly discovered virtues. I marveled at the fruits. My friends got closer. My children grew contented. My husband became more loving, all because I turned from self-absorption to looking at the needs of others. Living these virtues was the missing piece of the puzzle I couldn't see. I needed to live Mary's virtues, to understand her from the inside. We see them in Scripture: silence, obedience, kindness, meekness, and tenderness. I couldn't find comfort in Our Lady before this realization, because her virtues were foreign to me. Our comfort generally resides in the familiar, and Marian values simply aren't that for most of us. It might take some time, lots of prayer, and plenty of time in silence, but these virtues don't have to remain foreign to us. On to location 2450. As ever, Catholicism is the only antidote left standing to deal with all these struggles in the feminine heart. Ours is not a trendy diversion, as women from the last 20th centuries can attest, but the most powerful force on earth when unleashed. Even this lengthy list of obstacles to our faith is nothing compared to the transforming power of God. We can debate all we want about what will appeal to women and try to contort the church and its message to many things. But the real appeal is what it's always been: Christ. He offers the kind of love that women's hearts crave, to be known just as we are, intimately, uniquely, and purposefully. It was this love that transformed Magdalene. It is this love that brought us Saints Helen, Hildegard, Joan of Arc, Bridget, Bernadette, and all the Catherines, Alexandria, Siena, and Labore, to name a few. And it is this same love that can transform the hearts of every woman. But this kind of love is not currently available in the public square, and that's where the real work is for Christians. We cannot leave it to someone else to tell women where they can find true happiness, even if they don't yet have the ears to hear us. Somewhere, seeds of our example are prayers, and the truth will sink in, if only because it is different from what everyone else says. And when it does, then the soul will be ready to face the God-man, who fulfills the desire of every living thing. So that's a powerful book. I hope you get it. It's a very uncommon, unique message. It's quite clear Satan is destroying men. He's destroying women. He's destroying families. He's destroying society, destroying countries. And we have to claim it back. It's a simple message through the centuries, taught in Scripture, not exemplified by many in churches today, including the Catholic Church. Unfortunately, Satan's hard at work there too. But Mary exemplifies these beautiful virtues taught in Scripture that we all need to exemplify. So our masculinity will be reformed. Women's femininity will be reformed. People will be delivered from their delusions that if I'm a man who says I'm a woman, well then it means I'm a woman. That's just so sad that people are actually deluded to that extent. Have compassion on them. They don't mock them. It's tragic. We're all deceived in certain ways to some extent, but that's a very deep deception. Or for a woman to think that she's a man. You can't even argue with that kind of deception. It's basically at the level of somebody who thinks that they're made of glass. Prayer, love, patience, dropping a little word here or there. It's certainly not something you want to come at just with pure logic, because that logic and those facts are so very simple that it's not a matter of logic and facts and reasoning as though it's a tricky problem that women are women and men are men and that there's this binary. It's not a tricky problem. There's some spiritual deception going on, something just demonic. And the same thing happening with, this book points out well, even literally, about so many of the famous feminists who, she has a chapter on that came from many of these women had horrific relationships with their mothers. And were involved in the occult, witchcraft, lesbianism, and they're the icons of feminism. I'll leave you to purchase the book and read the chapter, but probably not a surprise. So we have deep-seated evil through mainstream media, music, art, culture, social media, on and on, where our whole culture, children, young people, middle-aged, older people, men and women, just being duped, thinking they're independent, free thinkers. They're anything but. They're indoctrinated, and they don't even know it. So this book is a good antidote, good help. Great message. Hope you buy it. Thank you for listening.